I really want to focus on small cap companies in the Nigerian market. We've seen the market rally significantly over the last 1 year, and as it does so, there is a tendency for a lot of investors to begin to speculate into small cap companies. And we've seen that happen so far this year. Indeed, small cap companies are up about 18%, outperforming the market. And joining me in the studio to give us his thoughts on how to go through small cap companies and the investment opportunities there is Babatunde Oladosu. He's an analyst with financial derivatives company. Babatunde, it's great to have you on the show today.
Good to have you, Wole.
All right, I want to, first of all, maybe you can just run broadly among the small cap companies and which sectors you think are looking attractive right now.
Okay, thank you, Wole, and thank you, viewers. Now, small cap companies, by capitalization and by definition of the Nigeria Stock Exchange, are companies through which the market cap falls between below $150 million. What this means is that everything, the stock value and the share outstanding of the company falls below 25 billion naira. Now, small stock companies or small cap companies or stocks are stocks in which people look in for capital appreciation. People go in with the margin for price appreciation.
Okay, but which sectors in particular? I mean, some people say insurance is good. Do you agree?
I agree totally. Based on the classification, basically the tier 1 banks and some consumer and industrial goods companies are basically the large caps we have. So the small caps and the mid caps are basically the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical sector. Yes, the oil and gas. Basically, you'll be so shocked to hear that almost all the stocks in the oil and gas sector
come down quite a bit.
They have,
so you begin to think of them as small cap.
Some of them, Forte Oil has done really, really well. We've seen a lot of price appreciation for Forte Oil. We've seen Eternal Oil and Gas doing really, really well in the market. So basically, small stock companies are really, really invested in because of the price appreciation.
Okay, but in the insurance space, if you can come back to that, which companies do you think people should begin to consider right now?
The insurance sector for Nigeria basically used to do really, really well. Now they've come really, really down. Some stocks are still doing pretty, really well. But we think that with Mansard doing really well in that industry and the price being really, really priced more than the industry PE, we see the margin for people, for investors generally, to go into other stocks like Prestige Assurance. We've seen Prestige Assurance doing really well. They've been on the Guinness list for the last 2-3 weeks. Yeah. We've seen Prestige Assurance basically. We've seen ICO Insurance. ICO Insurance too is doing really well. These companies have good corporate governance. Okay. They took a beating because of what happened in the market. Yeah. And we think that with increased investor confidence, with increased liquidity in the market, we see investors generally, going into this small cap stocks in the insurance sector.
All right, what about pharmaceuticals? Some people say fits in. Do you agree that that's something to consider too?
I totally agree. There's another thing that affects the fundamentals of fits in generally. Nigeria has a very high incidence of the big three. They call them the big three: malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV/AIDS. Now, most of our drugs demand comes from abroad, India and the US, because most of our pharmaceutical companies do not have WHO pre-qualification. Now, FITSIN is in the process of achieving that. We think that in the next 1 year, FITSIN is very likely to get WHO pre-qualification, meaning that they're going to have exposure to this large market for drugs, for malaria, for tuberculosis, and for HIV. Already, they sell some HIV antiretroviral drugs, and they have a lot of malaria drugs. Then, FITSIN have been in the market for a while. They've had to raise capital. We've seen them take a beating like other stocks. They're really, really down. And I would think that FITSIN is going to do really, really well as the pharmaceutical company.
What's your thoughts on Transcorp? Many will classify that as a small cap as well.
Yeah, Transcorp is a company that obviously has a lot of promise. Why would you say that? They're involved in the power sector reforms. They got the Wole power distribution company. We heard yesterday that they signed an agreement with General Electric to build a generation capacity to 10,000 megawatts. What that means in a sense is that we're going to double, more like what Nigeria currently generates. Now, the basic issue with Transcorp now is Transcorp is playing in some really attractive sectors. They have Terrago, the fruit concentrate company. But we are looking at Transcorp, and they really have to impress the market. What is the business model? How are the subsidiary companies doing? Each subsidiary companies. Transcorp is currently selling below 2 naira. We think that Transcorp can really, if it puts its acts together, can sell far below what it currently does, based on the subsidiary companies.
Far above that.
Far above that.
Okay. But in going into companies like the ones you've mentioned, many people will point out risks like liquidity risk. And what other risks? Or maybe we can start with that point. how big is the liquidity risk in going into small caps these days? We know that volumes have picked up a little bit across the market, so including small caps. So your thoughts on the risk of investors playing in that space right now?
The risks basically are still, it's still about the liquidity exposure people have, the fears. Based on what has happened in the market, the immediate past we just had, people, investors generally, still have that restraints for small caps because they are not very, very liquid. How easily can you purchase these stocks? How easily can you dispose of them? Those are still issues to look into. Then corporate governance, the large cap stocks basically have, I'll probably will not say the best, but in terms of publicity, in terms of how the market perceives their corporate governance,
they've had to up their game a little bit in
some of them actually
corporate governance.
Some of them are licensed on how many exchanges, like we see GTB in more than one exchange.
Yeah.
So we think the large cap companies currently have that liquidity, the corporate governance exposure. The market perceives them to be. And we're seeing some mid-cap companies too getting increased exposure on the corporate governance. We think that as small cap companies begin to impress the market based on the corporate governance processes they have. And another good thing is that Nigeria Stock Exchange, based on its long-term goals, the goals of growing market cap to $1 trillion, is focused on investor confidence, investor protection. They are putting measures in place to ensure that companies make good use of technology, they boost their internal controls. We think it's not a one-day thing. Obviously,
over time, we'll see some
but we think that in the small to medium term, we are going to see, again, with more exposure of those stocks to the market, when people buy them more, when they are purchased, and we see a lot of trading activity in them, we see earnings, and the scrutiny will come, and we think that over the small to medium term, and as the market, as large cap stocks get the pressure, when the pressure is built on them, we think that for capital acquisition, investors will come to the small caps.